In a world obsessed with facades, most wear their masks without question, hiding cracks, pain, and truths too heavy to bear. They assumed you'd be just another shadow behind a screen, another quiet ghost fading into the noise. But what happens when the mask slips, when the quiet breaks, when the truth is laid bare so fiercely that the world, especially the internet, has no words left? This is that moment. That rare seismic shift where silence speaks louder than any scream, where exposure isn't weakness but a weapon, where the underestimated rise not with noise or fury but with cold, undeniable power. Welcome to a new journey. He wore it like armor, a second skin, a quiet shield, not for applause, not for deception, but for protection. And that's where they all got it wrong. They looked at you, saw silence, saw stillness, and assumed fear. They thought your mask meant you were hiding something weak, something broken. But truth is, you were hiding something they weren't ready to face. Yourself. Because you were never afraid of being seen. You were afraid of being misunderstood again. Afraid that if you stepped out too early, they'd twist your truth into a spectacle. So you stayed quiet. Not because you were small, but because you were preparing something bigger. They thought they had you figured out. A silent observer. Just another background character. But oh, if they only knew what was bubbling under the surface. That silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. You were watching, calculating, learning their patterns, tracking every smile that hid envy, every handshake dripping in fake praise, every whisper laced with venom. And while they thought you were irrelevant, you were turning your pain into blueprint. You were turning every cut into a map. You weren't hiding. You were sharpening. Damn, isn't it funny? How the world claps for the loud but only fears the ones who speak in silence. You let them think you were quiet. Let them build fake stories about your absence. And deep down, it hurt. You felt it. Every dismissal, every ghosting, every nah, they ain't worth much. But instead of crying over it, you used that silence like a blade. You didn't beg to be understood. You didn't cry for validation. You simply stared through the noise and whispered to yourself, wait, they'll see. And they did. Because when the time came, when you finally stood in your truth, mask off, no filters, no fake voice, just raw, undeniable, unapologetic you. They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They went quiet. You weren't supposed to show up like that. You weren't supposed to evolve. You weren't supposed to be powerful. But now you walk different, talk different, move like a loaded question that nobody wants to answer. You became a walking contradiction to everything they said about you. And the mask? It wasn't fake, it was necessary. It was your pause button while you loaded the next level version of yourself. So they ask, why were you so quiet back then? You don't owe them a story. Just smile and say, I was becoming something you couldn't control. Because this wasn't about them. Never was. This was about you. Learning to carry the storm before you became it. You feel that? That's power returning to your chest. That's breath filling your lungs again. That's the sound of chains breaking. And now that the mask is off, you don't just speak, you command. You don't just show up, you shift the energy in the room. And the ones who never saw it coming, let them sit in that silence. Because it's their silence now, not yours. You ever notice how silence gets under people's skin? How they start to squirm when you don't react, when you don't defend yourself, when you don't play into their circus. Yeah, that's because silence isn't weakness. It's a knife, a slow, calculated blade that cuts deeper than screams ever could. You didn't stay quiet because you had nothing to say. You stayed quiet because you knew your voice wasn't built for noise. It was built for impact. They expected a meltdown. They waited for drama. They wanted chaos. But instead, you gave them silence. And that silence, it echoed louder than any argument ever could. You let them think you had nothing left, and that drove them crazy. Because people can't handle mystery, they can't stand the unknown. They want to label you, box you in, shrink you down so they can control the narrative. But you stayed unreadable, untouched, unpredictable, and that made you dangerous. You see, when you go quiet, people start revealing themselves. The ones who couldn't wait to speak on your name, they show up real quick. And the ones who pretended to care, they disappear just as fast. That's the gift of silence. It filters, it exposes, it makes the fake ones flinch. And when you finally do speak, they listen. Not because you're loud, but because you've earned your voice through war, through restraint, through that cold, patient buildup. Damn, you walked into the storm and came out calm. That's power, that's control, that's lethal, because the ones who scream the loudest usually have the least to say. But the one who speaks last, that's the one who owns the room. You didn't rush your rise, didn't post every move, didn't beg for eyes. You earned every glance, every whisper, every double take. And now when you speak, it feels like a hammer hitting glass. It shatters the silence in them. They called you passive, they called you cold, but you were just focused. You were observing, calculating, waiting for the exact second when your truth would sting hardest. Because silence isn't empty, it's loaded. Every second you didn't clap back. You were adding weight to the moment you finally would. And when it dropped, the world froze. Because you didn't scream, you didn't plead, you just stood there, unbothered, unshaken, undeniable. So if they ask you why didn't you speak up sooner, tell them because kings don't argue with jesters. They just watch the crowd until the throne is empty. Then they take it. Let that silence ride. Let them sit in the unease. Let them drown in the questions you'll never answer. Because silence, that's not your absence. It's your strategy, your weapon, your revenge, and it's cutting deeper than they ever imagined. You think the world wants your truth? Think again. They want a version of you they can swallow easily. A puppet they can control. A mask you wear to keep them comfortable. But your authenticity, that wild, untamed, unfiltered you, that's what scares them into silence. Because authenticity is a mirror. It shows them what they don't want to face. It exposes their lies, their weaknesses, their hypocrisy. It shatters their carefully crafted illusions. And they hate it. They fear it. So they push you down, try to shut you up, try to bury you beneath noise and distractions. But you refuse to be invisible. You refuse to be censored. You refuse to blend in. You wear your scars like medals, your story like a war banner. Or the discomfort you cause when you're real, when you don't apologize for your fire, when you don't tone down your rage or your pain, when you don't make yourself smaller just to fit their boxes. It's unsettling, it's chaotic, it's revolutionary, and that's why they tried to silence you. Because realness is a threat. Because the moment you stop hiding, the whole world shifts. You walk into rooms and don't ask for permission. You speak and don't water your words down. You live on your terms and they don't know how to handle it. The internet, the world, the crowd, they want drama but not depth. They want spectacle but not truth. They want a show, not a storm. But you came to break the show, to shatter the stage, to redefine the game. Your authenticity is not a gift for them. It's a warning. It's a challenge. It's the dark fire in the eyes of someone who's survived hell and isn't afraid to burn it all down. So when they fall silent, when the noise dies, know that it's because you exposed what they couldn't handle. Your truth is a thunderclap in their quiet lives. It's a crack in their safe illusions. It's a mirror reflecting their fear. Don't apologize for being too much. Don't shrink because they're fragile. Don't soften your edges because the world wants a round shape. You are sharp. You are raw. You are the unfiltered storm they tried to cage. And when you stand in that truth, naked and powerful, there's no turning back. They didn't expect you to be this authentic. They didn't expect you to own your chaos. They didn't expect you to expose yourself and leave them silent. But now, you're the thunder they can't ignore, the truth they can't silence, the force that rearranges everything in its path. And that's the power of authenticity. You remember the moment you realized you didn't belong? Not really, not truly. You tried to fit in, played the part, smiled when it hurt, nodded when they lied. You danced on their strings, hoping maybe this time they'd let you stay. But something inside screamed louder. You don't belong here. Because deep down, you knew the truth. You were never built for their shallow games, their fake smiles, their plastic dreams. You were wired for something else, something bigger, something darker, something wild. They tried to drag you into their world, but your soul was a tornado waiting to break free. Your mind wasn't meant for cages. Your spirit wasn't built to obey. No, you were born to disrupt, to tear down the walls they built, to shatter the mirrors that showed only lie. They painted you as the problem, the outcast, the misfit, the troublemaker. But that's just their way of fearing what they can't control. Because when you don't fit their mold, when you refuse to play by their rules, you become a threat, and threats get silence, shunned, broken. But you're not broken. You're not shattered. You're a rebellion waiting to explode. You don't belong with the ones who are content with small dreams, with hollow victories, with fake friendships and empty words. You belong to the storm, the chaos, the fire that can't be tamed, the energy that refuses to dim. And that's why you walk differently, speak differently, look differently, because you see through the masks they wear, because you don't settle for less, because you're not one of them and never were. But those scars, they're the proof you dared to be different. And in that difference lies your power. The power to rise when they fall asleep. The power to speak when they stay silent. The power to burn brighter than all their false lights combined. So when they ask why you stand apart, why you don't follow the crowd, just smile. Because the truth is simple. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to break the mold, to expose the cracks, to be the dark twist in their story. And that, my friend, is your greatest strength. They whispered it quietly at first. Maybe they're done. Maybe that was the end. Maybe this is just another broken story. But comebacks aren't polite. They don't ask for permission. They don't wait for applause. They just arrive. You remember those moments when you were left behind, when they smiled over your shoulders, sure you were finished, when every door slammed shut in your face. Those were not signs of defeat. They were the fuel. They fed your fire, slow, steady, burning beneath the surface. You didn't crumble. You loaded. You built strength where they saw weakness. You stitched wounds into armor. You took the whispers and turned them into a roar. The beauty of a comeback is its unpredictability. They plan their next moves on your past. They map their victories on your failure. But you rewrite the script. You flip the game board. You become the player no one expected. That silent strength, it's terrifying. Because while they prepared for the old you, the quiet, broken, ignored version, you rose as something new, something stronger, something dangerous. They watched as you vanished. They assumed you were done, but you were gone to grow. And now that you're back, they don't know where to look. Their maps are useless, their assumptions shattered. Your comeback isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself what they never believed, that you're more than scars, more than setbacks, more than their silent mockery. It's quiet, too. No fanfare, no cries for attention, just steady, undeniable progress. Like a storm building in the distance, ready to rip through the lies and doubts they fed you. And when the storm hits, they'll remember the one they ignored, the one they wrote off, the one who came back not just to survive, but to dominate. So let them whisper, let them doubt, let them underestimate. Because the greatest comebacks aren't loud, they're deadly. They're silent assassins moving unseen, unstoppable. And when they realize it's too late, you'll already be miles ahead. You're just waiting for your moment. And that moment, it's closer than they think. Pain, it's not just a feeling. It's the fire that burns you down only to build you back up. Sharper, stronger, deadlier. Every scar on your skin isn't a mark of defeat. It's a signature of survival. It tells a story of battles fought in the shadows, where no one was watching, where the real war was fought inside your soul. They think pain breaks you. Nah, pain carves. It chisels away the weak layers, strips away the lies you told yourself to survive, and reveals the cold steel beneath, the sword forged in the flames of your darkest nights. You've been melted, hammered, shaped, not into something fragile, but into something lethal. Something that doesn't bend to pressure but cuts through it. Every betrayal, it wasn't just a wound, it was a blueprint, a lesson in how to trust better, how to stand taller, how to never let anyone hold the blade against your back again. Every loss, it was fuel for the fire, not a pit to fall into, but a forge to step into. The heat melting your old self to reveal the weapon you're meant to be. You felt the sting of rejection, the cold brush of loneliness, the burning ache of failure, but you didn't fold, you didn't shatter, you hardened like a sword in the furnace. You embraced the agony, knowing that with every strike of heat, you were growing sharper, more precise, more unstoppable. You are not a victim of your past pain. You are its master, its wielder, and that means you carry power in every movement, in every breath, in every glance. You don't flinch when the world tries to test you. You don't cower when darkness tries to swallow you. Because the pain that once threatened to break you, it now fuels your will to survive and dominate. This is your revenge, not loud, not violent, but sharp, silent, deadly. You don't need to yell it from rooftops. Your existence is proof enough. Your rise from ashes is the echo that breaks the silence. So hold that sword steady, hold it high, because the pain that shaped you also made you a weapon the world fears to face. You are forged fire and sharpened steel, and no one can dull your edge. When you stepped out, no filter, no mask, no lies, the internet did something unexpected. It didn't erupt with cheers or chaos. It didn't flood with noise or hate. It fell silent. You felt that silence, didn't you? That heavy pause where every eye locked on you but no one dared to speak. That moment where the world held its breath because what you exposed wasn't easy to swallow. They expected a show, a scandal, a meltdown, but instead you dropped truth like a bomb. A truth so raw, so unfiltered, that it cracked the screen and froze the feed. The internet is a beast that thrives on noise, on drama, on distraction. It wants you loud, it wants you angry, it wants you performing, but you gave them something different. You gave them silence that screamed. You gave them authenticity that shattered their filters. You gave them a glimpse of reality, so sharp it cut through the endless scroll and stopped time itself. That silence was more than just a pause. It was a statement, a warning, a declaration that you are no longer playing their game. They didn't expect you to expose yourself, to show your scars, your rage, your fire, to tear apart the scripts they wrote about you. And when you did, the silence said it all. It's in that silence that power lives. Because real power doesn't chase likes or comments. It doesn't beg for validation. It stands firm, unmoved, a force that demands attention without shouting. You became a storm wrapped in quiet. A shadow that stretched across the digital noise, turning heads and breaking chains. Watching, wondering how the broken soul they dismissed became the force that no algorithm could bury. You're the glitch in their system, the silence in their chaos, the truth they hoped would stay hidden. And that's why the internet fell silent. Not because you faded away, but because you arrived unstoppable, unshakable, undeniable. Let that sink in. You broke the cycle. You exposed the lies. You owned your pain. And in that moment, the world didn't know how to respond but with silence. Because silence can be louder than any shout. You don't owe anyone an explanation. No stories, no justifications, no apologies. People want to understand you. They want to control you. They want to put your actions in neat little boxes so they can digest your journey. But you're a storm, wild, chaotic, unpredictable. You don't explain your silence. You don't apologize for your scars. You don't justify your choices. Because every move you make is a statement, a declaration that your life isn't up for debate. They want details. They want to know why you stopped talking, why you chose the quiet path. But the truth, you were loading your weapon, sharpening your mind, building your empire in the dark. Execution is the language the world respects. Not excuses, not promises, but results. Silent, deadly, unstoppable. Your success doesn't need a soundtrack. It doesn't need to be announced. It simply happens. And when it does, everyone listens. Let them guess. Let them invent stories. Because their confusion is your advantage. The less they know, the harder it is to stop you. The less you explain, the stronger you become. Because control belongs to those who act, not those who talk. You've been underestimated for too long. Ignored, written off. But now, you're not here to convince anyone. You're here to dominate, to rise so high their voices can't reach you. Execution cuts through doubt. Execution silences critics. Execution wins. Just execute. Relentlessly. Unapologetically. And watch the world fall silent again. This time, in awe.